Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris and this is Hetty. And this is my favorite 24 DIYs of 2024. Can you believe 2024 is past? This year went by so quick. Now 2024 was my first full year as a YouTube content creator. So keep that in mind when watching the videos. My editing skills do improve. And for those of you who don't like hearing the music while the DIYs are going on, I hear you, and I have gotten a lot better by the end of 2024. So with that being said, those early on videos have a lot of music in it. And like I said, I get better. So I hope that doesn't stop you from watching and enjoying. Let me know in the comments down below if any of these favorites of mine were favorites of yours. I will also list in my description box links to the original videos. So if you hadn't seen those videos, then you are more than welcome to click on the link and go and visit them and give me a thumbs up. All right, with all that being said, let's begin.
This first one, we're going to start with these chunky hearts on a stick and some foam and a Dollar Tree planner. And then we're just going to remove the stickers with some heat and a scraper. And just be careful, it's really hot. Now I'm just going to take some scrapbook paper. This I got from Hobby Lobby. And I'm just figuring out which ones I want to use. I am just going to trace out one of these hearts on the white paper and then two of the hearts on the pink one. Okay, and once we do that, we're just going to cut them out. And then I'm going to put some walnut gel stain from Americana on the back sides, on the sides, and just a little bit on the front of the edges, and also on the stem. I'm going to use some plaster chalk paint, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of dry brushing and just do it very lightly. And instead of using Mod Podge, I'm just going to use this glue stick. Make sure we get the edges. Just going to go over it with the brayer. Make sure I get it down. All right, and then we're just going to let those dry. I'm just going to take one of these Dollar Tree planners. And I'm going to dry brush over it, give it more of a rustic look with some plaster chalk paint. And I'm not going to worry about the inside because I really don't think that you're going to be able to see it. But if you want to do part of the inside, you can. I am just going to let that dry. And I did notice one of these sticks felt loose. And yeah, it's definitely loose. So I'm going to put a little bit of wood glue in there. And we'll just put some down this little hole. Put that stick back in there. And let that dry. What I'm going to recommend you do is put these in before you make the holes for where you're going to want these before you put them in the pot. That way you don't hurt yourself. And I want these a little bit shorter, so I'm going to cut off some of the ends. And I'm just going to use my miter shears for that. All right, then you can go ahead and put that in that pot. Okay, I'm going to take some burlap and I'm going to cut just a little bit off, 5 inches or so. I'm going to cut 1-inch strips. I just want like some stems. Kind of pinch that in the center there. I'm going to take a little bit of jute string and just tie that in the center.
a little bit of hot glue there. Just hold that in place so that sets up. And then you just do that for the rest of them. All right, that's what we've got right there. I think those leaves just made the biggest difference. Now I'm going to put some moss in there. I've got to put my bags back in there just so I don't have to use so much. Now, if you want to make this a little heavier, because it is very light, put some rocks in it before you put the foam in it, and that'll give it some weight so it won't fall over as easy as it's going to right here. We can always put something around this base if you want to, but I'm actually quite fond of it being plain like it is. But let me know what you guys think. All right, so I just got a little mini screwdriver. Just kind of get it under there. All right, and then we just got to remove this little emblem from the glass. All right, and I'm just going to use some nail polish remover. Just going to pour it right on there. I'm just going to take some cotton balls with some more of that nail polish remover and just get in there and really scrub it out. And then I'm just going to spray some rubbing alcohol in there. And I'm just going to use some painter's tape and tape off the glass. And I am going to be taping both the front and the back sides because you will be able to see the back side through the glass. All right, now we can paint that. I'm just going to use some truffle from Waverly chalk paint. And I'm just going to do a dry brush, so we're going to pat most of that off. As your paint comes less and less on your brush, you can go a little harder. Just depends on how much distressing you want. When I first dip it in my brush, that's when I go light. So I can get a feel for how much is going to go on there. And if you ever get too much, you can always go back over it with the lighter color paint. And we're just going to let that dry. All right, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove these staples from this backing. All right, and I'm going to be putting some of this burlap on it. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut a piece off that's as large as this backing. And I'm going to cut around any edges that are sewn together. And then we're just going to start pulling out threads. All right, that's going to need to be trimmed a little bit. All right, and just want it kind of like so. Since the back of this is pretty much the same color as the burlap, I'm not even going to paint it. Just going to leave it like that. Set that aside and work on the heart. And the heart, we're going to need to fill that hole. And I'm just going to use some lightweight spackle since I will be painting mine. If you're going to stain it, make sure you use a stainable spackle. I just like to use a scraper just to kind of make sure it's all in that hole there. All right, and we're going to leave that to dry. I'm going to take one of these little wood cutouts that's in the shape of a key, and I'm going to give that a paint. I'm going to use this Dazzling Metallic from Deco Art in Shimmering Silver. And I'm going to make sure I paint the front and the back and get all into the ridges and along the sides. Then I'm going to take some of that truffle chalk paint. And then we're just going to distress that key a little bit, make it look a little old. Really focusing on the edges. looking distressed. We'll let that finish drying. All right, and I'm going to take this heart and use Vintage Victorian chalk paint from Folk Art and just paint that. And you can paint yours whatever color you want. I do suggest that since this is on kind of on the darker side, that you use something light. Give it some contrast so it stands out. And make sure we get along these sides. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to do some distressing, but I don't want it to blend in too much with the burlap. All right, then we're just going to let that dry. Then I am just going to take a little of that truffle and very lightly go down the edges. I'm going to little over the top just until it looks the way that you want it. And we'll let that dry. And while that's drying, I am going to take a Sharpie and on our little tile pieces, I'm just going to write XO the best that I can. And if you wanted to write the little numbers that the Scrabble pieces have on it, you can, but I'm not gonna. And essentially, it's gonna lay out like this. So I want to get the burlap where I want it. Just make sure the hanger part's in the right spot if you plan on using the hanger. All right, before we hot glue that on, I am going to see how this burlap trim will look. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty. I'm just gonna trim that off. All right, I'm gonna start by tacking on a little bit of hot glue here to keep this in place. I'm going to go ahead and tack this down also, the other piece of trim. Just lay that flat. All right, I got that piece on there. I'm just going to make a little loop for us to string it through the other piece of string. We're just going to loop it. Just to give us enough of an opening right there. And we'll put the other piece through it. Don't like that up there. All right, we'll put that back in there and loop it with it already knotted. Unless we go back through here. Yes. And then pull on the unknotted side. That way we're not seeing that knot. All right, that is better. And we're just going to hot glue this on the back side, snip it off. Now, I don't want it to slide down, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very small amount of glue and I'm just going to tack that right here. That way it won't move around. It'll hang in the same spot. Just going to get rid of some of these hairs. Now, make sure our burlap is just how we want it. And we're going to put some hot glue on the back of this heart. And right where we want it and push it down. That way the glue will also hold down this burlap to the backing. And just hold it there until it dries. All right, just like so. And we're going to take our little XO pieces. I'm going to put just a little bit of hot glue around the edges, just in a few different spots. Set that in there. in my first Easter project, at least on my channel. This is going to be my first Easter project. So I've got just some greenery we're going to need, and I've got some little picks I've gotten from Dollar Tree. You can use whatever kind you like. I am going to be using some of these foam Easter eggs that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. They were like $1.19 after the sale, so they were pretty inexpensive. Going to need some floral foam, a birdhouse. This is the only birdhouse I had on hand. It does have a heart on it, but you know what? Hearts are for all year long, so gonna make it work. And then we're just going to need a crate, some paint, and I will be using the paint that I had in one of my shopping hauls. I am going to use a gel stain by Americana and Walnut. I'm going to be using the Folk Art matte color in the lemonade. I've got Apple Barrel's Cloudless and Apple Barrel's Key West. Folk Art matte in the color lavender, light lavender, and then the Folk Art matte in the Cottage Rose. So those will be the paints that I'm going to be dabbling with. And you will also need some sticks. And I just went out in my backyard and grabbed some sticks, which is awesome because my last house I couldn't do this with. So this was awesome. And then just gonna need possibly some of these wood skewers. And then I've got one of these wood dowels. The first thing I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and paint my wood pieces. I'm going to start by removing this sticker and then this sticker, which usually they come off pretty easily on the wood pieces, usually. Sometimes they need a little bit of a sanding. All right, we're just going to make sure we clean all that dust off. And I'm just going to paint the bottom part with this white chalk paint. All right, and then I am going to take this gel stain and the walnut. I'm gonna wipe that excess off in the stain. Probably should have done that before painted because I'm gonna have to touch up now for some of that white paint that's getting the stain on it. I'm going to also paint the bottom of it because I don't know if it's going to be able to be seen with what I'm going to be doing to it. So just in case, I'm just going to touch up that white paint. Also staining this crate. I'm going to paint the bottom of mine. You do not have to do this. It's all on your preference. And I'm at least going to paint the top half of the inside because, again, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it. So I'm just going to play it safe. Alrighty, we'll draw that down. All right, now I'm just going to take some of these wood skewers because I am going to be painting some of these foam eggs. And I am going to go ahead and just use probably about 10 of them. And I'll see how that looks. And if I need more, then we can always paint more. I think 10 should be fine. When you draw these, if you use a heat gun, don't get too close because it will distort that styrofoam. That's a beautiful purple. All right, we'll let those dry. All right, next I'm going to take some floral foam and I'm just going to glue that in the bottom here of this crate and watch it come out of the bottom. I knew that was going to happen. Oh well. So when you glue that on the bottom, you might just want to put hot glue on the little strips of wood on the inside, just so you don't have that issue. All right, I'm going to take this little wood dowel and I am going to glue that. I would probably normally just drill a hole through here and then stick that in and glue it really well, but my drill's downstairs, so I don't feel like going downstairs. It's in my kitchen with my kitchen makeover stuff. And you're going to have to hold that there for a little while since we use the big glob of glue until it dries. And you know, honestly, you could probably go ahead and use either super glue or some E6000, something that'll hold it down. I probably should have used some super glue. Of course, I just now thought about it, but if it falls off, I'll use super glue. And I'm just going to add more to reinforce it. And I am just going to take some more of this gel stain and I'm just going to paint some of that stick because, again, I don't know how much is going to be able to be seen. Then I'm going to want my birdhouse, but not that long. So we're gonna have to trim some of that off. I'm gonna put some hot glue down. Try not to burn myself. All right, and I am going to use some eucalyptus that I picked up from Walmart. I'm just taking the ones that are like on the side branches or stems or whatever they're called and sticking them in the longer piece where I can. I'm gonna take some of these picks that I had picked up at the Dollar, and I've seen them this year also, so just to give it a little bit of pretty color for the spring. I love these. I have to say these are probably my favorite finds at the Dollar Tree are these florals. They are just so pretty. All right, then we're going to take some of our sticks. You might want to put some hot glue, just a little dab on these eggs when you put them in there, just so we know that they stay. I always fling stuff across the room when I use those cutters. And I like the idea of just having some sticks by themselves. It looks just more natural. To cover up some of this green foam, I'm going to use some floral moss. I'll put some hot glue in there. And make a big mess. And if I would have thought about it, which I did not until I saw it, you can see the floral foam through these crates. So we can always shove some moss in there. See how that looks? Or you can get one of those crates that don't have the little splits through it where you can see through it. That way it just looks like it's kind of growing out through the crate. All right, shake it off a little. I'm not going to worry about doing that to the back side because nobody's going to see it, but you can if you want. I'm going to put some of these in there, I think. See how it want to look. I had also picked these up, these wildflowers from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to pull the green part off. Yeah, maybe just a few pieces. I don't like it there. There we go. Okay, so the main components of this particular project is going to be 3 of these Dollar Tree candlesticks and then 2 of these high cloche domes. And I always like to spray my glass items down with some alcohol. All right, and then I am going to paint them using Dixie Belle's Fluff and their chalk mineral paint. And you can use any paint you want. You can use chalk paint in white, Rust-Oleum, Waverly, whatever floats your boat. This is just what I'm going to use if I can open it. I'm just going to take the glass off, just a piece of tape, plastic, and I'm just going to set those aside. And I'm going to paint this whole thing in the same paint that I'm painting the candlesticks. And I want to go ahead and clean that up with some alcohol first because they're pretty slick. All right, now we're just going to go ahead and paint this with the same color. Okay, so 2 of these candlesticks we're actually going to glue top to top, just like so. And before I finish painting these in that section, I'm going to go ahead and adhere it. And I am going to be using some Gorilla Clear Grip glue and then some hot glue. And I'm only using the hot glue just so I can continue on with this project while I'm filming. If you just want to use the Gorilla Glue, or you can use E6000. And if you just want to let it sit until it completely dries, then you go right ahead. All right, then once that's dry, you can go ahead and paint it. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and distress it. And I'm going to go ahead and use Elephant to do the distressing with. I think I want more of like gray tones in it than anything. And just going to do a dry brush. So when you put your paintbrush in there, just get a little and then wipe most of it off. Now right around here, I just kind of want to put some more gray, and that's just because that seam, I don't want it to look like a blob of glue. And I think instead of wiping it, I'm just going to take some more of that fluff color. Just going to use the same brush, go over it, just kind of break it up a little there, and that way it just kind of looks more blended in, more natural. Yeah, that looks really pretty. And if you ever feel you had too much on it, like I've always said, just kind of go over the piece again. We'll set those aside and let them dry. Then we'll go ahead and work on these pieces and kind of distress them up a little bit. See right there, I just got way too much. Way too much of that gray. So I'm just going to go back over it with the white. Kind of tone it down a little bit. Okay, and we're just going to set these aside to dry, or you can use your heat gun. So the next thing I'm going to do is, I feel like the top of the cloches needs something. So I've got some of these small wooden cups that I picked up from Hobby Lobby, and we are going to just put them right there. But I need to paint them first. Start with the Dixie Belle, and I'm just pretty much going to paint it to match the base. Just wipe the top down with some alcohol, get off any dust and grease, and I used a lint-free coffee filter to apply that. I learned this little trick from a girl, I can't think of her name, but her channel is called The Cricketer, and she comes up with some of the neatest projects using your Cricut machine, but she uses this, and I thought, wow, I didn't realize coffee filters were lint-free. I guess I should have known that since I'm a coffee drinker. But we're just going to use some hot glue, and I'm going to glue that right on the center, covering this little indent. And I've got my glue on low. All right, and then I am going to take these bottoms of the cloche and attach And I'm just going to use some hot glue for this as well. All right, and then I am going to use some of this burlap trim from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use the top one. I'm going to wrap those around the center there. So I'm just determining how much I need to cut off. All right, I'm just going to take some hot glue, put a dab on there. And I think if we get it tight enough, you shouldn't need to put any more glue anywhere else besides the end, which is what I'm going to do right here, just like so. And per usual, I'm going to just kind of run my lighter over that.
Next, I'm just going to grab some spackle, and I'm going to grab one of these Dollar Tree bunnies, and I'm just going to fill in that hole that they have there. And then I'm just going to paint it with that baking soda and white paint mixture that I used on the birds and cover it up. And then I'm going to distress it also using the elephant chalk paint.
Now to decorate it, the fun part. So I've got some bamboo skewer sticks that I've got cut a lot shorter than it originally is. And I'm going to just I'm going to want it to look kind of like a flower stem, but not too dark. So I'm going to take some green paint and some of that Dixie Belle fluff. I just need a little bit. It's just holly branch from Apple Barrel. I'm just going to put just one little drop. And just got this pretty light green. And I'm going to take this piece here that I'm going to use as the stem on a flower and paint that. Okay, and I've got some wood flowers here. I've had these for a long time. My daughter's wedding was back in 2021, and she bought a big old bag of wood flowers so I could decorate her wedding reception. So I've got a lot left. And one day I decided to dabble and paint these. And if you want to see how I painted these wood flowers, comment down below in the comment section and let me know. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that little dowel that we painted and I'm just going to stick the pointed part right in there. And then I am going to stick the flat part right in the center hole. These cloches just have a little hole in the center, and I'm just going to poke that right in there, just like so. And then I'm just going to play around with it. Just going to take a little bit of hot glue, attach that to the stem. Do the same thing to this one. And for this little one, I am going to use one of these little bunnies and then some more of these wood flowers. May just have to finesse it a little bit and coax it to get in there. All right, and these are complete. Okay, on this one, I picked the sign up from the Dollar Tree. Just going to do a little bit of a sanding. Yeah, I'm just going to sand this down, sand some of this glitter off. And I'm just going to take some Dollar Tree craft paper and put that on the back. All right, that looks better. And I am going to start off by painting it an elephant from Waverly. And that might have been just a little too much. I'm just going to use my heat gun and dry that up. And I'm just going to take some white chalk paint and I'm going to do a heavy distressing on this because I just barely want the gray to show. I want more of the white. All right, and I'm going to draw that down. And you are going to need some either tacks, which is what I am using, and I picked these up from the Dollar Tree. You can also use some of these stickers from the Dollar Tree. You could use wood beads, and I'm going to stick my tacks down into the styrofoam. And I have got some oil rubbed bronze from Rust-Oleum, and I'm just going to spray paint these tacks and let those dry. Then I've got some of this macrame cord that I'm going to be using. And we'll also need some florals of your choice and some greenery. I believe I got this greenery at Walmart. And about right there, which is, let's see, about 6.5 inches from the bottom is where I'm going to start. But I'm going to start by gluing that right there. Then I'm just going to wrap that around and do not glue the front. You want to make sure these are as close as possible. And you can tack down on the back as needed if you feel necessary, which I'm going to do that. All right, and you're going to have a total of 14 strands going across the front. And on the last one, we can go ahead and hot glue that one down. And then put some hot glue on the back for the last piece. And then we can trim that off. Now I'm just going to put a little hot glue on the end so it doesn't unravel. All right, then we're going to take our greenery and florals and just kind of put them in there. I'm actually going to trim this one down just a little. I am just trying to bend that down as close as possible. That way I can still utilize the stem, but this will be sitting straight forward. I've gotten these little roses from Hobby Lobby, so just trim those off. And if you'd like, you can always just do a little bit of tacking of some hot glue so they stay, which I think I'm going to do that in a few spots. And you can use any kind of flower you want. My inspiration, I actually saw somebody selling this, something similar on Etsy for $20. And she used roses. And I don't know, I just wanted something a little different. And I thought these were pretty and I had them in my stash. Here's some of those wild flowers from the Dollar Tree. Oh, isn't that absolutely gorgeous? Oh my goodness. I'm going to stop right there because I don't think it needs anything else. I don't know if my tacks are dry yet. I'm going to trim the little pin part off. Okay, they're still wet. So those are going to need to dry just a little bit more. In the meantime, so I'm going to make just a little bow to go right in the center with this macrame cord. I'm just going to unravel the ends and then glue that right in the center. Okay, now you can either glue your little pieces down, but since I still have the little end of the tack right here, I'm just going to take a hammer and hammer it in once I make sure I like my placement. Start in the center. Just like so. Now all we gotta do is put just a little hanger right there and hang it up. What do you guys think? I don't know if you guys remember or if you even watched, but if you did, in my Hobby Lobby haul, I had picked this wooden roundup. This is a 25-inch, and I said I knew exactly what I wanted to make with it, and that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to be turning this into a wall clock. And I paid, it was $19.99, and then I did get 40% off of it. So what is that, about $11? $11.99, something like that. And I picked up a clock kit from Amazon, but it comes with pretty much everything we're gonna need.
And Kirkland's was my inspiration, but it was just way too expensive. And then I also saw one at Etsy, which was more expensive, but I liked it as well. And I just ended up combining the two looks.
Okay, so first thing I need to do is get all my animal hair off of it, which they do tend to get a lot of hair everywhere. I'm just wiping it down with a microfiber rag. And I like the edges just as it is. So what I want to do is go ahead and put on a coat of linen white chalk paint. Okay, so about 4 coats later, I've got the desired effect that I'm looking for. And I am just kind of cleaning it up a little bit. I did go over it with a 400 grit in just some spots that were a little rougher than I wanted, or I might have had a little piece of the brush hair in the paint. So I just used this just to kind of correct those issues. Here's a little piece of hair right here. And it just kind of sands it up. So the next thing I want to do is I have got a 18-inch ruler. And I am going to make sure I've got it centered. I left the tag on just so I know where is center. But I am going to push it all the way up and take a pencil, and I'm just going to give it some lines. Then I'm going to do that going all the way down and do the same thing. Okay, then I'm just going to measure and see how thick these are, which is 4 1/4, and I'm just going to measure up 4 1/4, mark spot, and measure up another 4 1/4, and mark the spot, and draw my lines. Okay. Now I am going to try to mix me up some paint that is as close to this brown as I can get. The truffle and the territorial beige is actually pretty close.
And I'm just using a ruler to help keep my line straight. And this is a metal ruler, so that paint wipes off very easily.
I'm going to dry that down. Okay, so I am going to take and sand over these lines. I'm just going to use a 220 grit. Okay, I'm going to take some white paint, kind of dry brush over that. See if I can't get this any better. Okay, I am happy with that. So we're going to let that dry down. And I've got some images that I've got to, well, I'm going to cut out some stencils on my Cricut machine. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so the next thing I am going to do is I'm going to find center, which I've already done. And then it's time to go ahead and drill a hole. And I'm going to use a 5/16. And I'm just going to drill a hole, but I want to protect my desk, so I'm just going to use a block, and I'm going to place that on the bottom. And then I'm just going to drill a hole. All right, and we got our hole there for our clock mechanism. That's a perfect fit. So it was a 5/16 drill bit. Now, when I put this in here, this little mechanism in here, I've got to have room to be able to put it on the wall. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's long enough. I don't have any thread showing. Okay, so I'm going to have to do something different. All right, I am going to put this in here all the way. And I'm going to trace where it's sitting. If I can just get me a block under it. Okay, so I am going to cut that out. And I've got a miter box saw here, but that apparently is going to be too big, maybe. All right, that's going to be perfect. So I started with a saw. If you've got one of those little handheld ones that is smaller than this, that would be more ideal, because you just want to make sure, like you can see here, I put some grooves in my spots where I didn't want to, but you just be very careful. You're not going to go all the way down, just enough to take off roughly 1/8 of an inch. Okay. I have this chisel. It's a 3/4, I guess that's in inches chisel, and just a hammer. And you're just going to, just kind of set it where you want, knock it, and it'll start scraping. See that? It'll just kind of start scraping the top part off. And it's really easy, a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. All right, so we've got our hole. All right, and I've got my numbers for the clock cut out on my Cricut. And I will make my project on the Cricut, I guess, shareable. So if you have Cricut access, then you can go in there and you should be able to find it. And in the description box, I will list the description number so you can find it easier. And you can, if you don't have a Cricut machine, you can always buy stencils of your own. The numerical numbers are 3 inches. So if you can find some 3-inch stencils, which I'm sure Hobby Lobby probably has them, or Michael's or Joann's, and maybe even Walmart, but we know how that can go. So like I said, they're 3 inches. So if you find stencils, you can use those just as easily. And I had cut mine out just so I can line up the easy way. And yes, I'm wasting a lot of stencil material by doing it this way. So you can always just, cut them out like I did here. I've actually got these in just little blocks because I didn't want to waste from here to here in stencil material. But yeah, you can always cut it out like that just to save on material.
And then I'm just going to lay them down and then just kind of crease where I can cut, where I know those numbers are going to sit fine, and then just trim around it.
Make sure it's burnished down pretty well. And I'm going to start top and bottom. And then, to make this easier, I am going to cut this one off from there. And this one off from here. And then this 3 we're going to want in the center also. So that'll make it a little easier to line up. That right there. Oof. If that happens, just lay it back down. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go over these stencils with the white color that we used. And I'm just going to do that with my stencil brush. They say that this is supposed to stop excessive bleeding. I've never done it before, but I figured I'd try it because I really want this clock to look nice since it's going to be hanging in my living room. And I'm just going to clean off my brush with some water so that way I can reuse it again. And I'm going to use the black. Oh, that is pretty crisp, so I guess that little trick worked. All right, I'm gonna let that dry down by using my heat gun, of course. All right, so I've got this other stencil and it's got my last name initials, and I am going to put that on here as well. I'll trim it down a little bit more. And then I've just got the year me and my husband were established. Okay, and if you happen to get any paint, you can just go ahead and touch that up, which I just noticed. All right, and I am going to seal it just to protect all that nice and prettiness. Make sure I don't have any dust on there. And I am just going to use the matte clear enamel from Rust-Oleum. You are more than welcome to use a polyacrylic. Can also be used. The only thing with that is you just have to be careful with smearing the paint as those letters and stuff get wet. Well, I don't want to take that chance, so I'm just going to use the spray. And then I am going to let it sit before I put the mechanism in. All right, and that's just going to need to dry.
Okay, so putting the mechanism in was pretty easy. You just have to follow the directions given by the manufacturer. But I figured I'd just leave this part in here in case you guys need any guidance or help. You can just kind of follow along. Now when you put that minute hand in there, it's got a rectangular hole, I guess you could say, but you will line that up. That's why you see me kind of moving that hand a little bit, trying to get it to fit down in there without forcing it. And then you're just going to make sure that those hands are parallel to one another. So you may have to kind of bend them a little bit so they're not rubbing. And this clock is now finished. So with the cost of materials, the wood round was $11.99. The clock mechanism cost $13.99. And miscellaneous expenses like my paint and stencil material, it cost around $10.99. And that was a total of $36.97, which was a 70% savings. So let me know in the description box, what do you guys think about that?
You can also use different wood pieces to make some magnets. I've got two different ones here. I've just got a little wood round, and then I've just got this little wooden flower shape that came in a pack that I had found at the Dollar Tree. And I printed out some images off of Creative Fabrica just on regular printer paper. And then I've also got some tissue paper that I had gotten from the Dollar Tree.
And I just decided I was going to go ahead and use this image on the bottom corner and just trace it around my flower and then just cut it out.
All right, and I'm just going to take some Mod Podge here. And just take some wadded up plastic wrap here and just smooth that out. You could also use a brayer, I'm sure, but it is up to you. All right, we're gonna let that dry down before I put the top coat on, and I also got to do some sanding, so we've got to let that dry down. Now for this other piece, I am going to use this tissue paper, and I'm just kind of getting an idea. I really like this area right there.
So I'm just going to take my water pen, and I first like to trace around the entire image and then just tear it away from the paper. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of fine tuning, if you will, just trimming off wherever I need to trim off.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just take some white chalk paint, paint the inside of this. All right, once that's dry, put this down there. Okay, I'm going to want to trim a little more off.
And I'm just trying to trim off enough to where all of that tissue paper is going to be on top of the white and not the brown section of that wood round. And then I'm just going to apply a coat of Mod Podge and then apply that tissue paper on top, and using that rolled up plastic wrap to smooth it out and get all those air bubbles out from underneath that tissue paper. And then once we've got that down nice and smoothly, we're just going to go over the top with a layer of Mod Podge.
All right, we're going to let that one dry.
And going back to the flower, I'm going to take a little nail filer that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to go around the edges, trimming off any of that excess paper, and just make sure you go in a downward motion. And then once you finish that, just go over it with a layer of Mod Podge.
I love this one just the way it is. So all you got to do is stick a magnet on the back, and hey, that's all there was to it. Okay, so the flower to me just looks a little plain. So I'm going to add some jute. It's a little thicker jute. I'm going to say it's probably a 4-ply or something, but it's a little thicker than the stuff you get from Dollar Tree. I had picked this up from Walmart. And I am going to wear my little finger protectors, and I'm going to glue the end of this together so it does not unravel.
And then I'm just going to take that jute twine and I'm just going to wrap it around the edge of that flower, just using some hot glue, making sure to protect my fingers with those little finger protectors. And hey, if you guys will do me a kindness and hit that like button, and also leave me a comment, let me know which one of these magnets was your favorite. And I want to thank you guys for watching.
All right, I just think that looks better. We'll just pop a magnet on there and that project will be done. All right. All right, I've got this old window frame that I picked up from a thrift store. It cost me $10. Now, I don't know. Do you guys think that was too much? I kind of feel like maybe it was too much. It doesn't even have the glass in it. I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments down below, did I spend too much, or is $10 a good price for an old window frame? And it's got some nails in it. I'm gonna go ahead and remove those. I can see a couple of them here. Okay, I'm just going to take some Simply Green and I'm going to clean this baby up. And even though I'm not going to do anything to the back, I am still going to wipe it down just because that's how I roll. And I also have, it's a 1x6, and a 1x6 actually measures 3/4 by 5.5 is what a 1x6 actually is. But that's what I've got here. And I've just had this sitting in my wood pile for a while. I did not want to buy anything new for this project, and I got lucky. I had most everything here. And what I'm doing is I am going to measure how wide this window is and then trim this piece down. And it's going to serve as a shelf. Okay, and I'm just going to take this to my miter saw and trim that down. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and give this a good sanding. All right, I'm just going to use a finer grit to get it smooth. That was an 80 grit I just used, and this one is a 220. And then I'm just going to take a wet cloth and I'm going to wipe all the sawdust off. All right, and I'm just going to set this here to dry. Okay, so I'm going to take this wood, lay it flat. My wood has a little bit of warpage to it, so I'm going to just have it to where the warpage is kind of bowing downward. This is the back of the window, and I want to join these two pieces here. And to do that, I am going to use some liquid nails and some L brackets. These are the corner brace zinc plated finish L brackets. They're 3-inch size. Now I'm going to need 2, maybe 3. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to put one down the center or not. Okay, so I'm going to start by putting the liquid nails down here on the bottom. All right, we've got those L brackets put on, and now we have a shelf. And I think 2 should be enough support. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint it black. And I am going to be using Iron Gate by Heirloom Traditions. It is an all-in-one paint, and it is good for indoor and outdoor use. All right, I've got that painted. I didn't do full coverage. Kind of still want it to maintain its slight rustic look. So we're gonna let that dry. And I'm probably gonna let that dry overnight. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to wipe these down for spray paint. I'm not going to worry so much for this part, and that's because it's going to be mounted to the wood round. But I definitely want to spray paint these legs. And I'm going to go ahead and take these little rubber pieces off of the legs. And then I'm just going to use some glass cleaner to wipe it down. Then I'm just going to use some Fusion all-in-one matte black spray paint. This is an indoor and outdoor paint. Okay, I'm going to stain these wood rounds. I had picked these up in the spring shop at Hobby Lobby. They're regular $14.99, got them 40% off. So that made them $8.99 each. I have 2, actually I bought 3 of them, but I'm going to be using 2 in this project.
And then I'm just going to use my heat gun to get these tags off. That's just the easiest way. And then once I get those tags off, I'm going to go over it with the sander. It's not really necessary since we're not even going to be able to be seeing that part.
And the wood stain I am going to be using is from Minwax, and it is the special walnut.
And even though this is a beautiful walnut color, I was looking for something a little bit lighter, but well, sometimes you just gotta go with the flow. So I did continue to go ahead and use this color, but feel free to use any color that you like.
All right, gotta let those dry. Since these are oil-based, I'm just gonna let them dry overnight before I continue on. All right, on the next step, we are going to be attaching the base to the top. And to do that, I'm going to be using some Starbond glue. And then I have got some number 6 1/2-inch screws. Now, if you can find some smaller, that'll be better because we're also going to be using some washers. And they're the number 6 washers. And if you can find smaller screws, then you can, of course, use less of the washers. But 1/2-inch was the smallest I could find, unfortunately. But I made it work, or I'm going to make it work. So I'm going to flip this over. And then we're going to find center by flipping this table over on top. All right, and I have got a metallic marker in white. And I'm just we're going to be using the second to the smallest hole. So I'm just going to kind of circle 2 on each of them, mark 2 on each side. That way when I put this back on, it's 1 lined up. And then I just kind of mark the outside of at least one of them so I know what I'm lining up to. All right, and then on this top part is where I'm going to be putting the glue. And I'm just going to kind of put it like that, go across. And you could also use that epoxy that you can find at like the Dollar Tree or any hardware store, but an epoxy would work really well too. Then I'm just going to align those back up. All right, and then we're going to take our screws, and I am going to put 4 of these washers in them. And now you want to go slowly. You want to make sure you don't go through the back side. So there is going to be a spot where you're just going to have to stop. And that one, for some reason, didn't tighten up very well. All right, so 5 may actually be better as far as the washers are concerned. And ta-da! Now, sometimes they may go through just a little bit. If that bothers you, you can touch that up, which that one actually had a little hole, but I can fill it if need be, but I'm not too worried about it. But that's it. All right, all that's left is to put a sealer on the wood part. And to do that, I'm going to be using the Minwax Helmsman spar urethane. It is for indoor-outdoor use, and I am using the clear satin. And per the instructions, you just want to make sure that in between coats, you sand it and that you put 3 coats on there. And if you're going to use it indoors, I still recommend that you use the 3 coats because, you know, if you're going to put glasses or something on there, all that condensation, you want to make sure you protect that wood finish. If you guys wouldn't mind, give me a big thumbs up. If you're watching on television, hit the arrow up on your remote control and then scroll over to the right and you'll see that thumbs up. Go ahead and click that for me. This will help YouTube push my videos to other people who may enjoy them as well. And to further push YouTube to help show my videos, go ahead and leave me a smiley face emoji down in the comment section below. That way I'll at least know that you made it this far into my rambling exit. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. And here's the finale. Okay, so I picked these wooden wreath bases up from the Dollar Tree, and they measure 12 by 12 inch, and I am going to be using 2 of them in this project. I've also got a 12-inch wood round. I picked these up in a 12-pack from Amazon, and I will list the link in my description box in case you're interested. And then I'm going to be using some 16mm beads that I also picked up from Amazon. Of course, you are more than welcome to purchase these anywhere that you want. I know Dollar Tree sells some in the strands, which I've got some right here. You could always use something like that if you don't mind smaller beads, but I want to use the 16mm. And then I will be using hot glue, and I always use the Gorilla Glue hot glue. I just find that it works pretty well as far as holding up. And then you're just going to see me with this little Dollar Tree basket, and I'm just going to put some beads in there. And one other thing you are going to need is I picked this vase up. I guess it's a vase, candle holder maybe. I don't know. I had never seen one of these just like it at the Dollar Tree, and I saw it and I thought, oh, that's really nice. And the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and paint the wood round in white color, and I'm using the Rust-Oleum linen white chalk paint. And then I'm just going to use my heat gun to dry it down. All right, and I am going to go ahead and paint the back as well. I'm going to make sure I get these edges just in case you can see them. Then I'm just going to take those two wooden wreath bases and paint those in the same color. Okay, and I'm going to set these aside and grab my little flat one once again. And I have got these napkins. I picked these up in a package from Amazon. I will also link those in the description box, but I thought they were gorgeous. And so I'm going to take one of these napkins. We're going to decoupage that to that wood round. And I'm just going to use some painter's tape to get these plies apart. Well, shoot, it stuck to my finger. Okay, so I forgot to hit record, and all I did was Mod Podge this down, and I just used the mini heat press, but you can use any iron that you prefer. I use Deco Art's decoupage napkin because it's got a sealer in it. I decided to give it a try, but I put a coat on, dried it with my heat gun, placed the napkin down, and then pressed with my heat press to reactivate that decoupage. And then I put 2 coats of the sealer on top of it, drying in between coats. All right, and that's what we got. It's so pretty. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to place one of these rings right on top of it. Okay, so I'm going to use some Clear Grip Gorilla Glue. Easy for you to say. Gorilla Glue. I'm just going to put that in a few different spots. And I'm going to use my glue gun. And then push this on there. And if you don't want to use hot glue, you could always just use the either Gorilla Glue or E6000 and just put the clips around the edges just to make sure it's all set up. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my beads. I'm going to not paint them. I'm going to leave it natural, see how that looks, and just start placing them around. I'm going to space them out just a little bit. Do you think I poured out the exact amount of beads that I'm going to need? Let's see. Well, I did. How often does that happen? All right, and then I'm just going to hot glue those beads in place. Okay, the next step is to put the other ring on the top of the beads.
And then I'm just going to use some Gorilla Glue, and I'm just going to place sporadically on top of those beads, and then I will finish it off by applying some hot glue to the remainder.
And I'm going to flip it upside down while it's drying. Put some little paint cans around there, and I'm going to let that sit for a minute. While that's setting up, need to go ahead and paint this jar. Okay, I'm going to take this tag off. I'm going to take some Goo Gone just to get that up. Then I am going to take some alcohol, spray this all around there, and use lint-free wipe to wipe it off. I use a coffee filter. I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to put some gloves on just so I don't get any fingerprints on our clean glass.
And then using the same white paint, I am just going to give this, ends up being 2.5 coats.
I'm not going to paint the bottom of it because we're going to be gluing that to our tray anyway. All right, I'm going to take another napkin, and I do have a water pen, and I'll go ahead and link this in the description box. But if you do a lot of Mod Podge or decoupage, like I love to decoupage, you guys that have been following me since the beginning, you may realize that I do love a good decoupage project. But I did go ahead and get one of these. They're not very expensive, but man, it sure is a lot easier than having to keep dipping your paintbrush. But I'm going to go ahead and get this layer peeled.
And then I am just going to take some pieces off the napkin that I'm going to decoupage to the bottom of the tray on that glass piece. And I ended up doing this size and needing 4 of them. And to apply the decoupage, I'm just going to use a paintbrush, put a layer down onto the glass surface, and then take that napkin and set it down gently. And then I'm going to use that cling wrap and gently dab down, kind of pushing just a little bit of pressure and getting those air bubbles out and smoothing that napkin out. And then once it's finished, I am going to apply a couple coats of decoupage to the entire surface. And then on the bottom of the wood piece that we made, I am going to find center. And then I'm just going to draw a circle where I found center, because otherwise I will lose my place. And then I'm just going to take some Gorilla Glue and hot glue combination and apply to the bottom of our glass piece.
All right, this project is done. Okay, on this one, we're going to need one of these terranium planters from the Dollar Tree. And then I've also picked up some butterflies from Amazon. They come in a 5-pack, so you get different ones in here. And I did go ahead and open up one of them so I can take 2 of these butterflies that I plan on using out. And they also come with a little sticky pad, which they say is supposed to stick to wood, ceramic, metal, glass, plastic. So I'm gonna need some moss and also just a little wood round. And it's gonna need to be small enough because we're gonna put that in here. I had picked these up from Amazon as well.
And then you're also going to be needing some floral wire, and I picked this up from the Dollar Tree. Okay, then I'm just going to go ahead and use my drill, and I'm just going to take a small drill bit and I'm going to drill a hole through that wood round. And the hole only needs to be large enough to get that wire through it, so you definitely don't want to do anything too large. Then I'm just going to take that wire and put that through that hole. And at the bottom there, I'm just going to twist it around so it doesn't come back out of the hole. And then just use some hot glue to secure it in place.
It says kind of fan them upward to give them that 3D look. And then with the 2-sided tape, put that right there. Do that with this other one also. And I'm going to drill another hole. Just kind of bend it to where it won't pull itself out. Go ahead and use some of that hot glue. All right, we now have 2 wires hanging up. I'm just going to kind of bend this in half and then back up. Hopefully you can see there what I'm doing. Kind of folding it in 3s. And I'm just going to take some alcohol and I'm just going to wipe this little piece off with that alcohol. Just make sure I get a clean surface to put this butterfly on, and we'll see if it works. Peel that adhesive off and stick that butterfly on there. And where we twisted it on the top, it's going to actually look like some little butterfly antennas. It just looks like little antennas. Oh my gosh, that's too cute. And we'll do that by folding it down. And then we're going to fold it down again, leaving a little loop at the top there. And wipe that again with some alcohol. Kind of spread those little makeshift antennas around.
And the next thing is to get that into that terrarium. And I'm just going to kind of bend those butterflies inward so I don't get them hung up and torn off. And then I'm just going to force it into that slot. And then I'll just straighten those butterflies back up. Okay, next thing is we are going to take some of this reindeer moss. And I'm just going to kind of bunch it up into a little circle, just squeezing it real tight. And then that way it kind of sticks together and forms like a little ball. And then we'll just place those into the terrarium, just giving it some greenery. And then I always save my scrap floral foam when I cut pieces off. You just never know when you're going to need it. And I'm just going to take a small piece and I'm going to use that small piece to put some flowers in that terrarium. And then I've got these florals I had picked up from Hobby Lobby. They're just little white flowers. And then I'm just going to trim one of those little pieces off from the top. And then I am just going to pull those pieces off of the stem. And you'll end up with 3 pieces after you cut them off of one another. And then I'm just going to stick those pieces in that small piece of floral foam. And then when I put them through there, I'm just going to make sure that I pull them back through on the bottom side. That way I can get them to the desired height that I'm looking for. And then I can just trim that excess off. And then I'm just going to secure that with some hot glue. And then I'm just going to glue that moss onto that styrofoam. And I'm just going to want to completely cover it. Also getting the sides. And you don't want to put any on the bottom because you're going to be gluing that inside the terrarium. Take some hot glue. I'll get that in there. Just gluing it down on that wood. Isn't that pretty? And you can just set that on a shelf somewhere. If you want, you can hang it up. But this one is complete. What do you guys think about that one? Okay, on this one, you're just going to need a pack of LED light set from the Dollar Tree. And then you're going to need 4 packs of the 5-gallon stir sticks. I picked these up at Walmart. When I got these, they were the best price compared to any of the hardware stores. So make sure you check Walmart out for these 5-gallon stir sticks. And what you're going to want to do is make sure you've got the bottom even and measure 17 across, and that's where you're going to want to cut. So you want these to be 17 inches long. Okay, and I'm going to take this out in the garage and I'm just going to do that on my miter saw, but you can use a miter box or miter saw,
Miter saw is definitely easier. All right, then you're just gonna wanna make sure you sand down those edges. And we're just gonna lay these out one on top of another. You just wanna make sure you get the ends as even as possible. And these are gonna be we'll go with 16.5. And I'm gonna take 2 of those 3 that we're gonna put on the back, and I like to have them 1 inch from the edge. And I'm gonna use one of these sticks, and I'm gonna place along the edge here just to make sure I have them all even. Just like so. And I'm just gonna leave it right there. I'm just gonna take a pencil and I'm gonna mark just so I know where to place these back down.
And then I'm just going to use some Gorilla wood glue, and I'm going to use some hot glue to adhere those 2 pieces to the back.
All right, and then we're just going to take that 3rd one and put it down the center. Here we have a nice, pretty blank surface for a sign. What I want to do next is I want to sand this down. And if I was in the garage, I'd probably just use the electric sander. But I'm not, so I'm just going to sand it down with just a little sander. Make sure it's smooth. Wipe all that dust off. Now here's the stencils I had cut out on my Cricut machine. And I'm going to leave the link to that in Cricut Design Space. I'm going to want to stain this first. And decisions. I would like to use an oil-based color I have. However, I really don't feel like waiting 12 hours before I can get back to this. I'm really hoping to finish this today. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do it with cover this with the Antique Wax by Waverly. And then I'm gonna dry brush some white over it. And you wanna make sure you get the edges also. I am gonna go ahead and do the back of mine. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do a dry brush of some white chalk paint. And you can do as much distressing, as heavy, as light, if any, as you want. Paint the whole sign completely white. I think that would look really good. It's all up to you. And it's just the more white I'm putting on this, the more white I want to put on it. And I think it's looking pretty good. So I believe I'm going to be using black paint for the letters. So I don't want the sign too dark so you can't really read it. And we're just going to draw that down. Okay, so I did spray it down after the paint dried with some clear matte enamel, and then I just sanded it down with a 220 grit sandpaper just to get it smooth. So now I'm going to work on my stencils, and I will have these linked on Cricut Design Space. And I did get this inspiration off of Pinterest. I had seen a couple different signs very similar, so I just kind of took them and made them my own. And if I could find the picture, I'll link it up on the top of the screen so you can see where my inspiration had come from. But I fell in love with this sign. I have been wanting to make this sign now for probably the last 3 years, 4 years maybe, and I've just never done it. And now that I got my channel, I figure, well, now's as good a time as any, and I can share it with people. Now, to make this easier, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and cut the top section off with the reindeer and sleigh.
And I'm just going to take some painter's tape, and I'm just going to tape one of those sides down after I've got it even, just so it doesn't move on me. That will just help me make sure it stays straight, because I have the hardest time getting those things straight. And then once you have that first piece laid down, you can go ahead and remove that painter's tape. And then when you're placing that second piece down, you just want to make sure you're overlapping the letters where it's cut down the middle, which happens to be in the M in Christmas. And you just want to line those up the best that you possibly can.
All right, finally got that stencil on.
And I'm going to be using a black chalk paint and a green chalk paint, both in the folk art brand. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the black, and you just want to make sure you pounce up and down. Don't go side to side. You don't want that to go under the stencil. And because I put that sealer down first, that will help prevent that paint from kind of soaking into the wood and spreading. And then after I've got that first coat on, the top part's pretty much dry, so I just kind of look at it, and if I want more paint, that's when I'll go ahead and add more paint. And then we're going to do the green. And once that paint's all dry, I'm going to go ahead and grab these LED lights from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to tell you, those lights are pretty bright, so if you don't want it as bright, you can definitely look for something that's not LED, I suppose. However, I'm going to figure out kind of where I want those lights. I'm going to just kind of test it here and there. It was really hard for me to edit this and show you everything that I thought needed to be shown without making it too long. So I'm just going to drill holes. I will tell you, when you drill the holes, drilling them through the front side gave it a little bit of a cleaner cut, if you will. When I did it from the back, I would have more splintering on the front side. I don't know if that's normal, but that's what happened in my case. So again, I am going to also glue the battery pack on the back. And then I'm also going to be tacking down those lights with just a little bit of hot glue. I kind of run the glue a little bit on the wood and then just push those lights through and just hold them there until that hot glue dries. And once you get those lights in, it is ready. And would you look at this? I absolutely love this. Let me know what you guys think.
I have got some crochet thread is what this is.
So I'm going to take some packing paper and tear it in half, and then I'm just going to shove those pieces into the center hole there.
And I've got these wood spindles that I found at a little antique store here in my town. He had a bunch of them, so I grabbed up a few of them. And I thought they would make the cutest little peduncles on this. Peduncle, is that right? Peduncle? I think that's right. But I thought it would be so cute.
Now when you're putting that spindle down in that hole with the paper, you're going to need to kind of maneuver the paper over to the sides a little bit so it fits in there nice and snugly. And I'm going to do that to both of my spools. Now before I start gluing anything onto that paper, I am going to prep all my picks. And I've got these little picks that have the acorns on it. And I got all of these from Hobby Lobby. And on the ends of some of those acorns had the wire that was kind of blank. And I thought it would look pretty if I kind of twisted it up, which I use my pencil to do that. And I'll do that throughout getting these stems ready to be put in there.
I'm going to take this one off because I think that one's too long.
And once I've got my picks prepped, I'm going to take some Spanish moss and I'm going to just shove it in that little hole, trimming it up as needed. And I'm not going to use any glue for that whatsoever. But then I'm going to take some glue on the end of my spindle. I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to start putting those picks in.
Would you guys look how cute that is? How simple it is with a spindle, one little pick, and some packing paper. I love this one. This one is so freaking adorable.
Now on to the orange one. Just going to repeat the process. Put my Spanish moss in, glue in this spindle, and then I'm going to take this other pick that you've seen me use in, I think it was the last video, maybe the one before.
I just wrap that end around there just to keep it together. I am going to put some blue around it.
And then you find yourself just having to fluff everything up. Then I've got this covered wire that I'm just going to wrap around my pencil, make those little swirly cues, and that way I've got those to put in the pumpkins as well.
All right, and here's the other one. So what do you guys think about these? Are you a fan of them? I know I sure thought they were pretty. I saw it on Pinterest for the first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are so pretty. I have to make some. And then everybody started making them. But that's the way it goes in the crafting industry on YouTube.
So I got these little oval shaped wood pieces from the Dollar Tree. I had found them in the woodpile section. And I was going to do something for Easter for them, but never got around to it. So here we are into fall. And I'm just going to remove those tags. Then I'm just going to take a little sander and sand off any of that sticky residue and just smooth it out and then wipe off the excess. And then I've got some napkins here. One I had picked up from the Dollar Tree, the other from Hobby Lobby. All right, this is the napkin I got from the Dollar Tree. It's just a 2-ply, so just remove the one excess ply. This other one from Hobby Lobby is a 3-ply, so I am going to have 2 excess plies to remove before we can Mod Podge.
I'm going to go ahead and paint these first. I'm going to use Plaster by Waverly chalk paint. Okay, we got those dry.
And I'm just going to put a layer of decoupage on each of these little wood rounds or wood ovals. And then I'm going to dry down that layer of decoupage with my heat gun. And then I'm going to take my mini heat press and press that napkin onto the wood surface. And I did forget to put some parchment paper in between the napkin and my heat press. So I definitely recommend you do that just in case. And then once you get the napkins on, just be sure to sand off any of the excess. So now I'm going to take the smaller napkin and I'm going to go ahead and trim out the pumpkin image. And I'm just using these itty bitty baby scissors. They cut very well, very finely, but I hate where your fingers go into because it's so small and tight. It's just a little uncomfortable. If anybody has any recommendations on some fine cutting scissors with some wide finger holes, let me know. Now I'm just going to apply some decoupage onto the surface where I'm going to be placing that pumpkin. Unfortunately, I got this pumpkin a little too high. I wish I would have gone down a little bit lower with it, and you'll see why at the end. And once I've got that pumpkin adhered, I am going to take a layer of the decoupage and I am going to go over all 3 wood pieces, sealing in the napkins. Okay, now I'm going to grab a ruler and I am going to push the 2 blank ones without the pumpkins on it down into that ruler to make sure that the bottoms are even with each other. And then I'm going to take some Gorilla Glue and some hot glue and I am going to place the piece with the pumpkin on it right in the center of those other 2 pieces. And I'm going to use that ruler to make sure that one is level as well.
Okay, I believe for the stem, I'm just going to use one of these Dollar Tree plunger sticks. And I just want to get an idea on how far I want that to stick up. I'm going to go ahead and draw a line on the stick. That way I can flip this over. That's how high up I want it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and cut right there. And you can use your preferred method of cutting. I don't want to go in the garage, so I guess I'll go ahead and use this little miter box.
All right, then I'm just gonna sand down where we cut, just getting rid of all those splinters. And I like the piece in its natural state, so I'm not even gonna paint it or stain it or nothing. But I'm just gonna take some Gorilla Glue and some hot glue once again, and we're just gonna adhere that to the pumpkin.
And then as far as a stand, I've just got the backs off of some old picture frames from Dollar Tree, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to just pull that off of that backing.
And before you adhere that stand on the back, you just want to make sure you've got it in the right area by holding that pumpkin up and making sure it rests where you want it to. And then I just mark where I plan on gluing it. Now, when I glued this, I used the Gorilla Glue and the hot glue, but I think I got the hot glue on top of some of that Gorilla Glue, so it didn't stick very well. That piece ended up falling off. So definitely pay attention on how you adhere this. Maybe just try using the hot glue on its own.
And now we have a stand for it.
So that napkin had the words blessed and thankful on it. So I decided to use my water pen and go around those words. That way I can tear it, kind of giving it a little bit of a jagged edge, rustic appearance. And then I'm just going to go ahead and Mod Podge that onto the pumpkin.
Okay, so that's what I got so far, and that's where I just use that napkin. Now, if you don't like that look, and I really kind of wish I would have thought of this before, I had found these little letter stamps at the Dollar Tree. They would be small enough that you could make your own little saying on there. They have uppercase and lowercase of each font style.
And then I felt like it just needed a little bit of distressing along the edges. And I've got this distressed ink that I picked up off of Amazon. I will try to link this in the description box below, but I'm just going to go around the edges. I accidentally got some on the front and I thought, we'll just make it work. So I just applied some around the top and then used a stencil brush just to kind of smooth it out.
Okay, so I picked this pickup at Hobby Lobby. It was 40% off of $3. I wish I'd have grabbed more because these are gorgeous.
So I'm just going to trim off 2 of the leaves and 2 of those little berry pieces. And when I get the pieces off, I'm going to take a leaf and the berry piece, and I'm just going to combine those together by wrapping the stem part of the leaf around the berry stem. And then I'm just going to take those 2 pieces and twist them together, making a little swag and just forming it how I want it to lay.
All right, so I've got some ribbon, I've got some burlap, and I've got some fabric. Fabric I just tore. This I'd cut in half to give me about 2 1-inch strips. This one, I believe I picked this one up before. It was either Hobby Lobby or Dollar Tree. This is Hobby Lobby, and this is fabric that was in a fat quarter bundle from Hobby Lobby.
And now I originally was not going to make any kind of messy bow for this. I was just going to do a simple ribbon with the green ribbon that I had gotten from Hobby Lobby, but I'm a little extra at times. Usually I like simple, but this time I went a little extra and decided this needed a messy bow. And then I just kind of fanned those ribbon pieces down. Now I'm just going to adhere it with some hot glue to the pumpkin, right where the pumpkin and the stem meet one another.
Okay, for this one, I've got some muslin. It was a white muslin fabric, cotton fabric that I coffee stained, and I just dipped it in the coffee, let it sit for a couple minutes, took it out, wring it out, threw it in the dryer. Did not rinse it off, so I'd get all these lovely little coffee stains. I've got a piece of cedar picket fence that measures about 18 3/4 inches high. And then I've got some wood rounds. These are the thick wood rounds.
Okay, I'm going to take some white paint. Any white paint will suffice. And I am going to paint the center of this wood slice. And once that white paint has had a chance to dry, I'm going to take a round sponge and I'm going to dip that in some black paint and just dab that in the center of those wood slices, making some eyes. And then I'm going to take that same black paint and I'm going to paint that picket fence board. Now on one side of the board, the front side, whichever you choose to be the front, don't paint the black all the way up to the top. Maybe go about halfway, because we want to go ahead and glue those wood pieces, wood slices, down with some Gorilla wood glue or any wood glue of your choosing. But this way we'll have the two raw pieces of wood touching one another so that wood glue could adhere it permanently and it will have the best hold possible. And once we got those down and secured, we can go ahead and continue painting with that black paint. And I had to use a smaller detailed, not really a detailed brush, just a smaller paint brush to get down in between those eyes where they meet each other. Next, I'm going to take that stained muslin fabric and my 2-inch wide ruler, and I am going to just make slits. And in that way, I am just going to rip where I slit that fabric. I'm just going to tear it all the way apart, and that's just going to give us 2-inch strips. But then I'm going to take the fabric strips and I'm just going to start wrapping them around what is going to be our mummy. Isn't he cute? I love those eyes. But I use some hot glue and I will also use some staples to adhere this fabric. And I didn't want so many staples exposed, so I then changed my approach from doing it on the front side to adhering it all on the back side. And then when I would staple down the fabric, I would leave a little bit of excess fabric from that staple and I would pull it back, fold it over that staple and adhere it with some hot glue. And just do that to your liking. Just have fun with it. I did. I enjoyed this project so much. I love the way it turned out. And then once I get the fabric on, I'm going to go ahead and take some hot glue and I'm going to go ahead and just glue that top piece of fabric, the bottom edge of it, to the top of the eyes. That way it doesn't move around. And then I just thought it needed some more fabric, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to add a little bit more fabric around the top part. And to finish it off, I'm just going to take some white paint on the end of my paintbrush and give it some little white dots, and this project is done. All right, so I'm going to start on the inside of the box, and as you can see, it's in really rough shape. They've got this little, I don't know what kind of box it is. It's meant to hold something. I don't know if it was a certain type of utensil, but I just removed those pieces with a chisel. And since I had the chisel in my hand, I decided to try to scrape off this mess, and that didn't work. So then I tried a scraper. That didn't work. So now we're going to go to the 220 sandpaper. And take my advice, just go ahead and jump to the 80 grit sandpaper, because that's what I end up using here in just a few minutes. And after using the 80 grit, that's as clean as I could get it. So now it's time to go ahead and start working on the outside of the box. And this also had like a old paper coating as well. Sorry if you hear any panting in the back. That is Hetty. She wants to get in trouble. But I went ahead and I started with the sandpaper. I did go ahead and just use the 220 grit on the outside of the box, which seemed to work pretty well.
So now that I've got everything sanded, I did go ahead and spray it with some shellac because I'm not sure if this is going to bleed or not, and I didn't know what colors I was going to use.
And when I get it back in the house, I realized I did not sand down the rim. So I am going to just use a fingernail file and just go around that edge of the inside of the box and just sand that down, prep it for painting. So I'm just going to start on the inside and do this rim. And it doesn't have to be perfect because I am going to be going for a distressed look. And if it's not distressed enough, I can just go over it with some sandpaper. Okay, next I'm just going to paint the entire box on the outside. And I didn't take any of the hardware off. I was just afraid if I took it off, I wouldn't be able to get it back on or find the right thing. So I just decided to leave that as part of its rustic charm. But when I go around the little latch, I just use a smaller paintbrush. And if I got any on the middle part of the latch itself, I just scrape it off with my fingernail and then just proceed to painting the rest of the box. And you can see on the top, I could not get that little black piece of old crusty paper off of there, but that's okay. It ends up not being noticeable at all in the end. Okay, once it's dry, I've got a 220 grit piece of sandpaper here. I'm just gonna lightly go over that. And I'm also gonna make sure I go around the edges just to bring out some of that wood. I definitely want people to know this is a wood box. After you sand that, make sure you wipe off all the dust. All right, so this is the fabric I had picked up at Hobby Lobby. And I just thought it was pretty. I thought it would go, well, that's why I chose this color, Inglenut, because I thought it would look pretty together. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and measure the inside of this box, which is 10¼ by 5. Make sure they're the same. 10¼ by 5. So 10¼ by 5. And then I've got some poster board here, or cardstock. You can use poster board, or you can use foam board. I was just worried about using foam board because this is such a narrow space. It's not very deep, and I didn't want to take up too much of the space. 10¼ This cardstock is just long enough. So if you're using something longer, you're probably going to definitely need to use like poster board. So we're going to take 10¼ and mark it there. And then we're going to go by 5. I think the next one I'm going to use my paper trimmer. Every time I try to cut something straight, it never fails. It's always crooked. So you're just going to cut pieces out for the entire inside of the box, the top, the bottom, the sides as well. And I did end up having to take just a hair off of each end just to make it fit. All right, now I'm going to start working on the fabric, and I am going to leave fabric about a ½ inch longer than what the measurements were. We will be able to fold them over our board or cardstock. And you want to cut fabric for all of the pieces that you cut with your poster board or cardstock or whichever you used. All right, once we got all those cut out, we're going to lay that cardstock on top of the fabric. Take some Mod Podge. It doesn't really matter which Mod Podge you use. I just used regular matte Mod Podge, and I am going to cover the entire piece of cardstock, and this is going to be the one for the top and the bottom. You're just going to completely cover it. And you want to put a little bit more than normal amount on there because this is fabric, so it's a little thicker. And we're just going to flip what we put on that around and press it into the fabric. And then we're going to go ahead and I just trim off the corners. Just will make it easier to fold the sides up. And then I'm just going to take some Mod Podge along the sides of the poster board or cardstock and fold the fabric into it. And I'm going to do that for all 4 sides. Again, this is for the bottom and then the top of the lid. Okay, and you're going to do that to all your pieces. And that's what you'll be left with, and let them dry.
All right, once you've got all those done, I'm going to first make sure they all fit with no issues. I'm thinking I might put these in last. Pretty good. Okay.
And then just going to take and run a line of hot glue. Well, more than just a line. I ran a couple lines, making sure to get on the edges so when you press those pieces into the sides of the box, they're going to adhere without any gaps. And I did start with the side pieces first, and then I'll go ahead and put the bottom pieces in after that.
Oh, that looks so pretty. Next, I've got the Ephemeral Melange transfer book from IOD, and I believe I want to use that one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this biggest flower out as neatly as I can.
And once I've got that image cut out, I'm going to peel it off of the sheet, and then I'm going to take that transfer and just rub it down with my fingers. And I kind of start along the sides and just rub my fingers down. And then when I get to the edge, you see here, I'm just going to just push downward just to get it all to adhere. And then I'll use the little scraper that comes in with the IOD transfer. And I'm just going to start on the sides of the box, and I'm going to burnish those images down first. And takes me a second to find the end of this little transfer sheet. But I'm going to pull it back and make sure that transfer is transferring, and then pull up on that sheet, that carrier sheet, as I go. And you just want to take your time with this to make sure that image is pulled down. If you pull it up and it's not, just lay that transfer sheet back down and burnish some more. And once you get the sheet pulled off completely, just flip it around and go over the transfer and just smooth it around it, making sure it is all adhered. And then where my image overlapped where the box opens, I am just going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm just going to cut right where the box opens. And when I get that box open, I will just take that transfer sheet, the smooth side, and I will just rub that over to make sure that my transfer is completely adhered to the box. And then I just wanted something under that little space under that flower, and there were some small words in this transfer book, so I just peeled that off and I am rubbing that down.
Okay, so I've got the ephemeral type stamps from IOD, but I believe I am going to use this. And I've just got me a little sheet that I had cut off of the flexible cutting board from the Dollar Tree.
And the first thing I like to do is I like to place the stamp on my image where I plan on putting it. That way I just have a good idea of where it's going to go, and then I'm going to take that flexible cutting mat piece and I will set it on top of my stamp. That way my stamp will stick to that and I won't have an issue with the stamp itself bending and moving. And I am going to use the color Stone Gray for my ink pad, and I'm just going to touch up my ink pad a little bit just to make sure when I stamp it I get a good amount of ink on that stamp. And then I'm just going to press my ink pad onto the stamp, covering all the letters. And I am going to wipe up any excess that got on areas that I don't want stamped. And then I'm just going to go ahead and place my stamp on the spot that I want it, and I'm always going to keep one hand holding that stamp down. That way it doesn't shift, because if it shifts, it's going to fuzz up the image, and I don't want that. And anytime I am done with the stamp, I'll take a baby wipe and clean it up, because I don't want that ink to dry on my stamps. And then I decided the front was looking a little bare, so I just took another piece out of that same stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp that on the front.
I want to sand over this image just a little bit, just to kind of dull it out, because the whole box is kind of rustic, before I put a sealer on it. You want to do this lightly, because it does come off very easy.
Then I'm just going to take a clear wax, and I am going to go over the entire box. And for the final step, I picked up some feet from Hobby Lobby. They come in a 4-pack, and they're 1-inch feet, I believe was the size, and you can find them in the wood pile. And now these feet come with 4 screws per foot. So if that's too hard on your hands and you want to do something different, that is completely up to you, but I thought this would add some rustic character. And once we get all 4 feet on, this project is finished, and I absolutely love the way it turned out. You guys will have to let me know, what did you think about the large box?
This color is Americana, and I've not even opened them yet, so let's do that. I'm going to set that aside for a second. I don't have any kind of slick stuff to make a smooth surfaces kind of sticky to the paint, so I'm hoping using some fine grit sandpaper is going to help. So I'm just going to go over this.
But after painting it, I really think you could skip this step. Just use your best judgment.
I'm just going to take some rubbing alcohol, and I'm just going to spray this down. All right, so it says to stir the paint, because this paint does have a sealer in it. And I'm kind of used to using paint like this. The Heirloom Traditions paint that I've used in some of my videos is also a one and done paint. So the first time I opened it, I didn't expect a liquidy. This is actually about the same consistency, so I was prepared to know it was liquidy. And also Sammy let me know when I ordered them. She's such a sweet lady. All right, and I did go ahead and buy the DIY paintbrush. I also picked this up from Sammy at Unicorn Dust Designs. So I'm going to try this paintbrush out. And I am definitely expecting this to need 2 to 3 coats, because it's such a liquidy paint. And I know that was the case with the Heirloom Traditions. That color is gorgeous.
Okay, and I've got some small brushes that I'm going to use to go around the bottom of that rim, and I am not going to paint the rim itself.
I love how this paint just kind of glides. Oh, I just love that. Now I am just going over this very lightly, because this paint does not need a lot of pressure. All right, I'm going to see how well this dries down with my heat gun on low setting.
As I was drying it down, I was just looking to see if it cracked like chalk paint, and there was no cracking.
All right, and I'm just going to apply this second coat.
And once I got the back dried, it's time to work on the front, and I'm just going to do the same exact process, making sure not to paint around that top rim. And if I did get any on the rim, I would just take a clean paper towel and just kind of scrape it off of there before it had a chance to really dry in.
Okay, so this is after 2 coats. Oh, I am loving this color. Now I'm going to say this back could use an extra coat, but I think the front side looks good. Okay, that is dry. It is looking absolutely gorgeous at this point in time. Next, I'm going to test out the rub-on transfers from IOD. And I picked up this packet from Vonda at the Painted Heirlooms. And I will put her link in the description box. And I will also put Sammy at unicorndustdesign.com, her link in the description box. So this one is called the Flora Parisiensis. Parisiensis. I don't know how to say it. I'm not French. There it is. And I fell in love with these flowers right here. So this is what I'm going to work on.
And for a minute there, I was thinking that the image might be too big, so I just decided to go ahead and just cut it out. And when I cut it out, I did tend to get a little close to the image and kind of laying it back down just to see where I can cut those stems off. And once I got that all trimmed out, I just peel off the back, and when you lay it down, you just kind of want to hover over the top of where you're placing it, and don't make contact until you are ready to commit, because it is sticky. And I kind of started where it was rounded because I wanted that image to kind of go up on the curved edge. And so I would also make some little slits to help that image lay where it curved and where it kind of rounded at the top of that tray.
And I have fingernails, so I'm just kind of rubbing them into there with my fingernails.
And then the transfers come with this little plastic stick to help you rub them into the surface. So that's what I'm using here. And I just work my way down to the bottom of the tray. And these transfers were just very easy to work with. And I absolutely love how this tray came out. It is my favorite today. And you guys just let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. I really want to know which one ends up being your favorite. And I appreciate all the comments that I get. I try to answer every one of them. I do read them all. And again, I love reading your guys' comments. It really keeps me moving along. And once you get that transfer pulled off, they do recommend that on the back side of that transfer sheet where it's nice and smooth, that you just go over the image, making sure it's burnished in really well. And just when I thought I was finished, I grabbed some gold leaf rub and buff, and just in a few spots, I added some of that gold, and then I would kind of brush very lightly around that rim, just allowing a little bit of gold to show through.
Now I'm just going to seal it, and I think that is absolutely stunning. Gorgeous.
All right, I've got this baseball that we found out in our backyard area. We've got a ball field back there, so we tend to find quite a few baseballs and softballs. But I'm going to start by taking it and painting it with Summer Crush, and this is from DIY. And I end up giving it about 3 coats. And then I'm just going to go over it with some clear wax, also from DIY, and I am going to cover that completely. And then once I get that on, I am going to take some brown wax, and I'm using Best Dang Wax by Dixie Belle. and I'm just going to kind of splotch it on there with my brush, and then I'm just going to take a towel and just kind of buff it in. Just wanted to give it a little bit more of a rustic appearance. And I went ahead and cut a face with my Cricut machine, and that's just because I did not feel like trying to tackle this free-handed again. So I thought I'd just make it simple. Cut me out a stencil, and when I rub it on there, this round surface is a little tricky to work with. I just try to get the stencil on there. I don't even know if I needed to use this transfer sheet. I probably could have just peeled it off like a sticker and put it on there. But I did go ahead and get it on there. And you see how it just lifts right back up. So the trick to it is, since it's a rounded surface, just kind of hold like one of the areas that you're going to paint. Just kind of hold it down and then stencil on your paint. And then you're going to see when I move to the next eyeball, I just kind of move my fingers over and hold that stencil down. And then I'm just going to place that stencil right back down where I want the nose and stencil that color in. And before I move on to the mouth, I'm just going to take a blast of heat, just make sure that what we just put on there is dry, just so I don't smudge it. And then I'm going to reposition that stencil, holding down where the mouth is, and just stencil in that paint. And then I just needed to touch up a few little areas with that Summer Crush color. I just noticed I had a couple little white dots. But after that, paint dries, I'm going to go ahead and take some wax. And I believe I just use the regular white wax, and I just go over where we painted on the face just to make sure that it's not going to flake off. And next I've got this fabric, and I'm just going to cut 1-inch strips, and my strips measured 7.5 inches long, and I really guess that doesn't matter how long they are as long as they're not any shorter, because if they're longer you can always trim it off. But I'm just going to cut several of those strips off.
Okay, the two unfolded side, the two ends. And then just take the hole, pull it through, tighten it up. Hold the two ends when you pull it through. Grab the bottom opening, that is now the bottom opening, and pull them through. Easy peasy, and just do that all the way around until you meet back up with the first area that you started at.
Now when you get to the end, you're going to have that little raised piece sticking up, and I didn't want anybody to cut themselves on it. So I just took one strip and tied it around that area in a double knot. And then I took one more piece right next to between that piece that we just tied and the last piece we just did before that, right in the center of them, and then just put one more piece in there.
All right, I've got this Dollar Tree hat. I believe it came like 3 to a package maybe, in the green and the orange, and they were on a stick. And of course you see how this is going along. So I'm just going to finish pulling that part off. And just, you can save it, toss it, whatever you feel like doing with it. And then I am going to see about taking this bottom off because I'm going to use it as a template to give it a new cover. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I've got some burlap right here, and we are going to need 2 pieces. So might as well just fold that in half. Take that.
And then I'm just going to use a Sharpie and I'm going to trace out where I'm going to cut. And then we're just going to cut that out. And when I go to cut that centerpiece out, I just fold it in half and just trim it out that way. So this next part is going to be a little hard for me to explain, so just pay attention. I figured I needed to cover this with that burlap, this little plastic piece that's left from the hat we took apart. And I figured to make sure I had enough fabric that it would kind of roll around it, I would just use my Sharpie and move that cone piece around and just trace that out and cut that out. Now the one thing I wish I would have done was, when I went to cut it, was allow for maybe a little bit over that line, maybe about 1/4 of an inch or so, maybe even just 1/8 of an inch. But you're going to want a little bit of overhang so you can tuck it into that cone. Okay, I'll start by gluing one edge to the cone, and then I'm just going to kind of tuck in that excess that I have there at the bottom and just kind of wrap that burlap around and use some hot glue to secure it. And I'm going to trim just a little bit off the edge just to kind of get some of the pieces that were coming out of there just kind of straightened up, and use some more hot glue and then just roll that onto the hot glue. And if I would have left just a little bit extra, I would have had that little section exposed. I would have been able to just kind of tuck all around that opening, the rim of that opening. I hope this makes sense. You can see what I'm doing there and where it came up a little bit short, but it works out. Next, I'm just going to apply some hot glue to the felt piece that we tore off of the hat originally. And then on each side, I'm going to go ahead and glue on my burlap pieces. Just pat on the burlap pieces. You can see there where when I wiped, some of those strands came out, exposing some of that black. A little bit more than I would have liked, but I did find a way to cover it up. But the smartest thing would have been was to make that the bottom part of the hat instead of the top part of the hat. But you see what I'm talking about. Then I'm just going to take some hot glue to the bottom of the cone and put that right in the center of the circle piece.
I'm just going to take a little bit of twine, tie it on top of his hat.
And then I've got some of these little paper sunflowers, and I'm just going to take one of those and hot glue it right over my little boo-boo where too much of that felt was exposed. And then I'm going to take some hot glue, and we are going to go ahead and put the hat on top of the pumpkin head.
All right, we got that rusty, crusty spring. I am not going to glue that. I'm not really going to glue anything to the spring. because whoever buys it from me, if they want to change the spring up, nothing's glued. All they have to do is untie it, take the ball off, and they can upcycle it to whatever they want. But I think that's adorable. I want to make a little label for his neck. Got some just resume paper. I've had this stuff for years. Just gonna rough up the edges a little bit with my paper scissors.
Next, I'm just going to take this pad of distressed oxide, and I am just going to distress this piece of paper by patting that stuff pretty much all over. And you can do as little, as much. Heck, you can even use a different kind of paper if you want. This is just for some inspiration. And then I've just got this little safety pin, and I am going to spray that with a clear coat. Dry it down and don't touch it because it's hot. I know, duh, it's hot. You just use a heat gun on it. So just be careful. Now going back to that piece of paper, I'm just going to kind of crinkle it up a little bit just to make it look even more aged. And then I'm just going to take a white marker and I'm just going to write boo on it. And I do end up going over this about 3 or 4 times to get that white to brighten up. Now I was trying a bunch of different methods to try to get that safety pin to look kind of rusty, and I found the best way is to take a color like burnt umber from Apple Barrel and paint that safety pin with that. I had some cinnamon here, so I would also dip my brush in some cinnamon and put that on with the burnt umber, kind of giving it the texture that the rusty crusties have. And once that safety pin is dried, I'm just going to take it and pin that piece of paper to the fabric on the pumpkin.
Oh, I love this. This is awesome, y'all. Look what you can do with the old, rusty, crusty, freaking bed spring. Look at that. If you like rustic, if you like recycling, if you like saving the planet, oh, if you like any of those things, then this is awesome. This just makes the cutest. What do you guys think about that?
Number 3. This next project is going to be a little spindle project. I've got one of these angel wings I picked up in a pack off of Amazon, and with how many came in a package, it only broke it down to where this was about 54 cents. And then I've got this wood spindle I found at a salvage store. And if you have a hard time finding spindles, definitely check your thrift stores, salvage stores. Hardware stores would even have them. I don't think they'd be too expensive, but definitely look around for some salvage stores. But I'm going to take these little molds that I had made with some resin, and I got these molds off of Amazon. I will also be sure to link that, but I'm going to go ahead and apply some Tight Bond Quick and Thick to my molds and just place them on the center of my angel wings, or each wing. And you can most definitely skip this part. You could also, if you have a stencil, you could take a stencil and maybe some baking soda mixture with some paint and just kind of spread that in your stencil, giving it some texture, kind of like an embossed look. But after those have a chance to dry, I am going to go ahead and take the color Vintage Linen. This is a DIY paint, and I do get all my almost all of my DIY products and IOD products from Sammy at Unicorn Dust Designs. If she doesn't have it, I will also use Heirloom Traditions I have both of them linked in my description box, but I am going to go ahead and paint the front and back of this. So while my wings are drying, I am going to take the spindle and put some Quick and Thick around one end of it. And then I'm going to take this 30mm bead that I picked up from Hobby Lobby in a 6-pack. I spent $2.99 for the pack on them, which made them 50 cents a piece. And I believe right now they're half off. But I am going to force that bead onto my spindle. If your hole is too small, you can take a drill bit and make that hole a little larger. And then I am going to wipe off any excess glue, and I am going to allow that to dry. Now, if you can find some beads that just have a hole on one side or even no hole and create your own hole, that would be perfect. But I've got some of this bendable wire also listed in my description box, and I am going to use this as a hanger and some extra support to keep my wings attached to my spindle. But in order for me to do that, I have got to create some holes. So I'm just going to take my spindle, set it how I'm going to want it to look, and then using a pencil, I am just going to mark on either side of it where I am going to be punching out my holes. And in order to punch out the holes, I am going to be using my Crop-A-Dile. I love this thing so much, I actually went ahead and also got the Big Bite. So I am set when it comes to having to punch holes. But I will leave this in the description box as well in case you're interested. But I'm going to go ahead and just punch some holes where I marked. And this thing punches through this wood piece like slicing butter. Easy peasy. Now next I'm going to take my bendable wire, and I am just going to kind of get an idea about how long I'm going to need this. I'm just going to cut it off. Scissors cuts through this very easily. And I'm going to thread my wire through the holes that we created, and I'm going to go through the front. And I'm just going to push each end through each hole, and I'll just pull them through, getting them as even as I can. Once I've got the wire pulled through and evened up, I am then gonna go ahead and take some of that Quick and Thick, and I'm going to apply it on the spindle that is actually touching the wings. Okay, then next I am going to support those wings in place on that spindle, and then I am going to pull that bendable wire as tight as I can, and I am going to twist it a couple of times just to secure those wings in place. Then I'm just going to make sure that everything is still in place, and I will set it to dry. After that is dried, I am then going to go ahead and take some spackle, and I'm going to go ahead and fill the hole in the top of my bead, and I end up doing 2 layers of this. So I'll put some in there, I'll let that dry, and then I'll go back to it, and then I'll put another layer, smoothing it out. Now, you can also use clay if you would like, but once it's dry, I'm going to go ahead and sand it smoothly. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish twisting this tie around the wings a couple more times. Next, I'm going to take the color Linen Toile. This is a folk art matte color, and to me it was just the closest color I had that resembled skin tone and didn't take too much away from the natural look of that bead, but because we put the spackle there, it's going to need something. If you choose to stain it, make sure you use a stainable spackle, but I'm going to go ahead and paint this, and I'm going to do as thin of a coat as I can, still covering up the spackle. And once that is dry, I will go ahead and take the top of my bendable wire and just figure out how much I want in order to have a hanger. I will go ahead and trim off some of that excess, and then I'm going to take what's left and I'm just going to wrap it around the wire I have shaped into a circle. Gosh, I hope that makes sense. But I will take that long piece and wrap it around the piece I have forming a circle, and I will just go and weave in and around that piece. Boy, that's hard to explain, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing here and you can understand it. And then once I've got as much twisted around, I'll trim off any excess. And then I am going to take another set of pliers once I get both sides wrapped. And I'm going to go ahead and bend in that end piece just so there's no sharp edges sticking out and nobody can cut themselves.
All right, you got a hanger in case they want to hang it on a tree. I think it would be pretty just sitting in something. You can use it as a base filler for sure, or a floral filler, put it in with some florals. But I like that because now it's bendable, so you can move it out of the way.
Next, I am going to go ahead and apply some clear wax. And even though the paint I use had a built-in sealer, the reason I'm going to apply this wax is because I want to go over it with a dark wax. And when you do this, you can, if you have too much of that dark wax, it's easily wiped away because you have that clear wax below it. But once I get that done, I'm going to take some dark wax, and I'm really wanting to focus around the edges of the wings, also around the mold that we put on there. Those are what I want darkened up. And I will have to wipe away some of that dark wax around the wings where I didn't want quite so much. And like I said, it's just easy to do because we have that clear wax down first. I then try to use my fingers to make sure I get that dark wax where I want it. And then so it looks uniformed, I am going to apply some of that dark wax on the back as well. Okay, got one last step here, and we are going to take a piece of silver tencel wire. Oh my goodness, I can't speak. And we're going to do the same thing to it like we did to the bendable wire that we used as the hanger, and just form it around the bead, making a circle, and then wrap all that excess around by weaving it in and out. And I am going to do that all the way around because I want this piece to look uniformed and all the same thickness. I'll place it on his head. I will take that excess piece that is remaining and I will trim that off. And then I'm just going to take some hot glue and I am going to tack it down in 4 different sections, front, back, and the sides. And then this project will be complete. Bye. All right, I've got one of these wall tiles from the Dollar Tree, and you see here, I'm going to turn it to where it makes a diamond shape. So this wooden Christmas ornament sign will fit on there perfectly. And I'm going to go ahead and trace that wood shape onto the wall tile, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. And I know this project's been done in the past by other people. I've never done one, and this is just my take on it. And I'll be using this image of Saint Nicholas, but I'm going to go ahead with an X-Acto knife and I am going to just cut out the center of this wall tile. And then I'm just going to go ahead and cut my Saint Nicholas image out. And I had got this image off of Creative Fabrica, and I'll leave that link in the description box below. And then I'm just going to place everything how I'm going to want it sitting, and I'm going to use a pencil and just mark lightly on that paper where the borders are. And then I'm going to do the same thing with that center cutout onto the wood shape. That way I know exactly where that picture will be going as well. Then I'm just going to take some plaster from Waverly and I'm going to paint inside where I traced the image on this wood sign. And then I'm going to take this absolutely gorgeous color red. It's the color Marquee and it's in a DIY paint. And I'm going to go ahead and paint my wall tile in this color. And I'm doing that before I adhere it, just so I don't get any paint on my St. Nicholas picture. But then while that's drying, I'm going to take that image of St. Nicholas and I'm going to Mod Podge it right into place. And I'll press it down with my fingers, use a towel and a brayer just to make sure it's stuck down there very well. And I did also paint the back of that sign in the color Marquee. Then I'm just going to take some Eileen's glue, and this is the Turbo Dry Glue. I had actually just recently purchased this and I thought I'd give it a try. But I'm going to put that along the center there so it will stick down around the photo without getting that hard clumpy glue. And I kind of wish I would have done that throughout this piece, because that hot glue does create that gap, as we all know, and I didn't much care for it, but it is what it is, and I'm keeping this for myself, so it's all good. But if I was to make another one as a gift, I would probably just go ahead and use that Eileen's Tacky Turbo glue all throughout. And then I'm going to use my Crop-A-Dile, and I'm just going to cut that wall tile right where the existing mounting hole is on that wood piece, just so I have some way to make a hanger. But then I'm going to go ahead and take some wax, and I am going to apply that all over where I painted that red. Next, I have got some of this gold gilding wax, and I am just going to take some on my fingertip, and I am going to go over all the little high spots on this wall tile, just bringing out all that beautiful texture. And I'll also go along the outer edge with that gold as well. Next, it is time to decide how I want to decorate this, and I contemplated between a bow and greenery, and I decided on the greenery, the floral. You can most definitely pick up some picks from the Dollar Tree. I tend to go when Hobby Lobby puts their Christmas on clearance, and I think they start out at like 75% off. That is when I try to buy the majority of my floral from there. I just can't beat the price. So I've had all this in my stash, and I'm going to start by laying out the pieces on my sign. One of these pieces I had picked up a few years ago had this little pine cones on it, and I had to remove the pine cone, reposition it to get it to sit the way I liked it. So definitely play around with it, make it your own. Make it how you think it's pretty. Like I said, I just start by putting it on top, and then I'm going to move my floral and greenery pieces off of my sign. And the first two layers, the first two bottom layers, this little piece of greenery I had picked up from Walmart, and then these berries I had gotten from Hobby Lobby, and I am going to wrap some jute twine around the center, kind of making a swag, but it's also going to serve as our hanger, and you'll see how I do that here in just a moment. I'm going to first start by tying a knot to secure that greenery in place. And you're going to want to make sure that you've got the two end pieces even at the top when you do that, because you're going to want to take those two end pieces and thread it through the hole. Then you're just going to flip that sign around, and I ended up tying like 3 knots in it because I don't want it to slide back through. And then once I get that done, I'm going to tie a knot in the top, and you have a little hanger. Then I'm going to go ahead and reshape everything to make sure it's laying just like I want. Thank goodness these things are made on wire. And then I'm going to take the rest of my picks, and I'm going to secure those in place. And I use hot glue. I use a bunch of hot glue. And once that hot glue has a chance to set up, this project will be complete. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you will consider hitting that subscribe button and join my DIY family. But let me know in the comments down below which of these 5 projects was your favorite. I love to hear from you. And thank you again. DIY number 1. I picked up this sled on Whatnot. If you're not familiar with that, it is like an auction platform online, and a lot of times you can find some really good deals versus going to a thrift store. But as soon as I saw this, I knew I needed it to make it over for Christmas, and I only paid $5 for it. But I am going to go ahead and use vintage linen, and I am also going to be using marquee Both are DIY paints, and I absolutely love the marquee. I think it is the most gorgeous paint for Christmas. But I'm going to go ahead and I am going to paint the runners in the red, and then I'm going to paint the remainder in the vintage linen. And of course, you can use whichever colors you decide. This is just how I decided to do mine. All right, after I get those colors on and I've got it dried down, I'm going to go ahead and distress the sled, and I'm just going to use just a little sander, and I'm going to go over it pretty much everywhere, but still a light distressing. I want it to look a little aged. That's what I love. If you don't like the distressing, leave it out. But I'm just going to go over this whole thing, and this also helps break down any kind of clumping or anything like that on the paint. So it'll help smooth it out and prep it for a transfer. And I do use this little broom that I had gotten a while back from the Dollar Tree, and I use it to wipe away the dust. I don't want to take a paper towel and wipe it because I'm afraid I'll get white on red or the red on the white, and it will still be maybe a little wet and smear. So I do use this brush to wipe away any dust, just for caution. Now, when I go to sand the red part, I do change out my sanding pad with a clean piece of sandpaper. That way I don't get any of the white again on the red, but I do go ahead and also distress the runners. Now, if you notice, I did not paint the bottom side of the sled, and well, if you want to paint the bottom side of yours, go ahead, but I didn't think it was necessary. Next, I have got this transfer from IOD. It is the Yuletide transfer, and it's got this beautiful pair of cardinals in it that I knew would be absolutely perfect for this. So I am going to go ahead and place mine just a little bit below center. And I'm doing that because I know that I'm going to want to have some bells hanging down. And once I've got the placement figured out, I'm going to take the little tool that comes in with the transfers, and I am going to burnish or rub the image onto my sled. And you just want to take your time with this process. This stuff, the transfers, it just varies as far as how easy or how difficult it is to rub them into place. It's going to depend on the paint you used, how rough the surface is, how smooth, how glossy. If you put a sealer down, I have found that if I put a sealer on first, sometimes that transfer is just a pain to get off. But again, just take your time, lift up the image slowly. If nothing is transferring, then just lay it back down and rub some more. Now, the sled has some ridges on it, and I decided I was going to go ahead and cut the transfer as it was sitting there and then peel it off. And I did that for the first two ridges. And then on the final ridge, I decided to try and cut it after I removed the transfer sheet. And honestly, I really like the way it looks if you cut the transfer prior to removing the transfer sheet versus the other way. It gave it a straighter cut. The final one where I had removed the transfer and then slid it and finished rubbing it in is a little bit more jagged. So as far as the technique to use, it's going to be your preference.
Okay, next I'm just going to go over this with some sandpaper just to help it blend in a little bit. And you want to do this lightly.
And then I'm just going to go ahead and put a sealer on it. I am going to use liquid patina, and I decided to use this because it says it's good for indoor and outdoor use, and whoever buys it may want to put it on their front porch. Who knows? So at least it's protected. And when I put the sealer on, I do go ahead and do it over the lightest color first, and then I'll put it on the darker color. That way that darker color does not bleed into my light color, because I guarantee you that red is going to get on that brush as you're sealing it. All right, next I'm just going to go ahead and take some bells and thread onto some jute twine or jute rope, and I'm just going to get an idea how long I want them hanging down. And then I will tie each bell at the end of each side of the rope.
Okay, so I've got the bells tied, and I'm going to make this very simple because I don't want to take away from the beauty of these cardinals. These are just some greenery I've got from Walmart, and then I had picked these up off of Whatnot, but they're just some sugared berries. And so I'm just going to make this easy peasy simple.
And I'm just going to tie some jute string around the center to gather those pieces and keep them together, and then I'll just wrap my bells around it, tying it off. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use my staple gun and staple that in place. And then once I get those staples in, I don't like the way they're exposed, so I'm just going to reposition some of those little sugared berries. And as far as the center where I tied the bells onto the swag, I'm just going to hot glue a sugar berry I pulled off. And then this project will be complete, and you guys will have to let me know, what do you think about this sled makeover? DIY number 5.
Okay, I got this insulator I picked up from an old salvage type thrift store, and I went ahead and sprayed it with a clear coat, and that's just because I need my paint to stick. And then it's going to be a snowman. That's what I see when I look at this, is a snowman. And that frosted look's also going to make it look a little icy, so thought that'd be a nice touch.
And the first step I'm going to do after the clear matte spray paint has dried is I'm going to go ahead and take black chalk paint, and I am going to paint where his hat is going. And that's just all around the top and the rim. And then I also try to get a little under the top of the rim, but really it's not necessary. And then after I get that hat put on, I am just going to take an embossing tool, and I'm going to make him a little face. I use 2 different sizes of the embossing tools. I use a larger rounded size for his eyes, and then I use a smaller one so I can make him a little carrot nose. You know, all I can say is do the best you can, because that's what I did. And I did go ahead and take a blast of heat to that to get it to dry quicker. But then I'm going to take some Mod Podge, and I'm just using the dishwasher safe. I figured that way if anybody wiped it, it was extra waterproof. But I'm going to apply that to any area that I painted. His hat and the section completely around where I painted his face. I am going to put that Mod Podge, and I do it around, even though I didn't paint like on the back side. I just do it completely around so it all looks even. All right, I've got this fleece scarf that I picked up from the Dollar Tree last year, and I am going to cut it down, and I end up cutting it to 4 inches thick. And as far as the width of it or the length of it, it doesn't really matter because we're going to trim it down. But what we're going to use it for is a scarf to go around this little snowman's neck. So just trim accordingly. But I'm going to go ahead and take that scarf. I'm going to tie it right below that area where I painted his face. I am going to get it tied and kind of scooch it around because I want that knot on the side. That way, to me, it just looked better. You know, if somebody sets it down somewhere to be displayed, it just looked better if that knot was on the side. But then I am going to trim up that scarf a little bit to the to my desired look. And isn't he cute? Oh, I just think he's adorable.
And what I really like is the opening on these insulators. You can use it as a little light. Get you a little tea light, and you can just, it'll fit right under there.
DIY number 4. All right, last one. And I've got these gorgeous chunky pieces of wood. I'm not really sure what to call them, but I'm going to call them pedestals. Got this lighter color and darker color. I'm going to take the color Vintage Linen, and I am going to go ahead and give them both one messy coat of paint. I do change that up here, which you'll see in just a few, on the darker one, and I'll explain why. All right, once I've got those dried down, which I did with my heat gun, I'm just going to take this fingernail file and I am going to go around the wood pieces and I'm just going to distress them. I have no rhyme or reason, just whatever my eyes find appealing is how I distress it. But I definitely want to focus along the edges, just anywhere that you think that there would be stressing. And then once I get to the darker one, I start distressing it. And I don't know if you can see on here or not, but the paint was really streaky. And it was streaky like that on the lighter color one, but on this darker color one, it just didn't look right. So somewhat of the way into my distressing, I just decided to go ahead and give this a full coverage of paint, pretty much, just to get rid of that streakiness. And of course, I'd go ahead and distress it as well. And once they are both dried down, I'm going to take some clear wax and I am just going to give them one good coverage of wax. Next, I've got these Dollar Tree flocked Christmas trees, which I know I've said before, but I absolutely love these. And I'm going to remove the base, the little wooden base, the tag, and any clumped up glue that might be on there. And then I am going to go ahead and drill a hole in the top. I know it looks like there's a hole here, but it's pretty much just the top. So when I tried to screw it in, it just didn't want to go because I needed to make a better pilot hole. But then I'm just going to screw that on there and repeat this process for the second one. Now I got these ornaments. There's a 3-pack. I picked them up from Walmart for $2.48. And I'm going to go ahead and grab one. I'm going to cut off the baker's twine it came with, and then I'm just going to grab some jute twine. And I'm going to take a piece of jute twine, and I'm going to double knot it around the base of the tree. And this little picker tool is handy because you can just pick those little branches out from getting tied up in that twine. But again, a double knot. And then I'm just going to take that ornament, both ends of the twine, and I'm going to thread it through the eye hook that's on this ornament. And then I'm going to get an idea of how long I want it to lay down, to hang it down. My goodness, people, I can't talk today. Sorry. But once I figure that out, I am just going to loopity-loop and tie it in a knot, trim off the excess, and this project will be done. And guys, you will have to let me know which of these 4 projects was your favorite. Comment down below. And again, make sure to check out the playlist. And thank you to Rustic and Lace DIY and Divine Designs for letting me be part of this playlist.